Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Stealth Hitches Hidden Rack Receiver here on our 2021 BMW X5. So this is what our Stealth Hitch is going to look like installed when we have the rack receiver portion inserted into the hitch tube body. So this is what it's going to look like when we're using our hitch mounted accessories such as our bike rack or cargo carrier. But the unique thing about this hitch is it actually has a completely concealed design when we're not using it. So on the side of this mechanism here, it's called the lacking mechanism, we're going to have a little knob that we need to twist, and when we twist that, we'll have a hold of the receiver tube here because that's actually going to drop out. As you can see there, when we don't have any hitch mounted accessories in, we can remove the receiver tube for a completely hidden install. Therefore, we're going to have a 100% factory-like appearance. We're not going to have anything shown underneath the vehicle. So then we are ready to attach our bike rack or cargo carrier. It's pretty simple. We just align the hole underneath with the hole here and just simply press it into place. So that's pretty much going to be the differentiating feature here of the Stealth Hitch and what really sets it apart from its competitors because it has the option for a completely hidden installation. I'd also like to point out that you can actually lock this receiver tube to the hitch body so you can make sure nobody can just come along and steal your hitch mounted accessories or the receiver tube. So something a little bit different about the Stealth Hitch. So this is the rack receiver portion. It can only be used with hitch mounted accessories such as a bike rack or cargo carrier. Therefore, we cannot tow with the rack receiver here. We can't insert a ball mount like we would normally with a trailer hitch. However, if you want to tow with your X5 and you have the Stealth Hitch, that's completely doable. You just have to purchase a separate towing package here, which comes with a ball mount, hitch ball, and mount. It's sort of an all-in-one assembly, if you will. So the capacity for the rack receiver here is going to be 600 pounds. Therefore, we really shouldn't have any issues as far as weight goes. This will be relevant to the weight of our bike rack, our bikes, or our cargo carrier and cargo. Now keep in mind, although the trailer hitch can handle 600 pounds, it's going to be tested separately at the vehicle. So you'll want to check in your vehicle's owner's manual to see if it has a rating for the tongue weight. If it does, you'll need to abide by the lower of the two ratings. So most of our bike racks are actually going to come with their own specific hitch pin that usually has a thread pitch that matches the shank of the bike rack. This is an anti-rattle feature, so you shouldn't need to worry about an extra hitch pin, but it does accept a standard 5/8 inch diameter hitch pin and clip. As you can see here, again, these are sold separately, but most of them are going to come with your hitch mounted accessories, such as your bike rack or cargo carrier. So in regards to installation, this is something that you guys can do by yourselves at home. It's not difficult per se. It is, however, going to take some time. We don't really need any specialized tools. The bulk of the installation is going to be removing some interior panels. So again, it is something you guys can do at home by yourselves. So I definitely encourage you guys to try this one. So now we have a couple measurements here for you. The first one I like to do is just going to be your ground clearance. So the distance from the ground to the bottom part of the trailer hitch receiver, that's going to be right at 12 inches. So I don't foresee you guys really having any issues with the steep driveways or hilly terrain. It shouldn't really bottom out on anything, to be honest. So the other measurement we have for you is going to be the distance from the center of the hitch pin hole to the outside edge of our bumper. And for this particular application, the hitch pin hole is pretty much going to be flush with the outside of our bumper. So we won't have any issues at all with our folding accessories, such as a bike rack or cargo carrier. When we flip them up to the stowed position, they shouldn't come into contact with the vehicle at all. So now that we've taken a look at some of the features, let's go ahead and jump right into that install so we can show you guys how it's done. So to start our installation today, we want to open the hatch here on our vehicle. We're going to come inside to either side here. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing these little access panels here so we can get to the back of our taillights. So in order to remove our interior access panels, it's pretty simple. On this side here, we're just going to have a simple button, press down. We should be able to pull them right out. We'll do this on the other side as well. So now we're going to come inside the rear of the vehicle here where our rear doors are. We're going to lay down our back seats. And if you look here on the back, we're going to have these two little covers here on the back side of this panel. We just need to take our thumb here, just lift those up. And the instructions are actually going to call for a T30 torque screw down there, but we found it's actually going to be a T40. So if we look directly down from there, we're going to have that torque screw we need to remove. We have one on the other side we'll need to get out as well. So once we get our two fasteners removed here, the rear of our panel should actually kick up because it is on a shock here. We need to go ahead and remove the panel from the shock. In order to do that, at the top of the shock here on the back of it, sort of a ball and socket sort of joint, there's actually going to be a clip around this, so we need to take a small flathead screwdriver. As you can see here, we'll just pry that clip back. Once we get that clip off, we should be able to remove the socket, then we can remove this panel completely. Now I can take our panel out and set it aside. So now we need to remove this panel here. We're going to do this by removing some plastic push pin fasteners here on the outside. We have several of them. We need to make sure we get them all. In order to remove these, it's pretty simple. We'll just take a pry tool here. We'll pry the center of it out and up, and then we should be able to move the rest of the fastener. We'll go ahead and repeat this on our remaining fasteners. So once we have all of our push pin fasteners removed, we should just be able to lift the panel straight out. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be removing this threshold panel here. In order to do so, we're going to have some torque screws on the inside here, which we'll remove using a T20 Torx bit. So once we have all of our Torx fasteners removed, we should be able to lift it up and forward to remove it completely. We can go ahead and set this aside. So the next thing we need to do is we need to peel this panel back a little bit, dislodge it, so we can get access behind our taillight here. In order to do that, we're going to have a little pocket in here, and there's going to be a cover over the screw we need to remove. So we'll just use a pick tool to remove that cover, and that screw is going to be an 8mm. So now once we have our screw out, we're going to turn our attention to this panel down here. We're just going to pull this straight out towards us. May need a trim panel tool to help us with that. So now we're going to come in here to the front side of our panel here. We're going to have one little plastic cap here, which is just directly behind our rear seats. We do need to fold the rear seats down to be able to access that, but we'll just take a trim panel tool here. We'll pry off that cover, and then inside we'll have one bolt we'll remove with a 10mm socket. So once we have our bolt removed, we're going to come over here to this trim panel. We're going to be pulling this straight out to release some clips. Once we remove that panel behind here, we're going to have a plastic push pin fastener that we need to remove as well. Try to get it all out of here in one piece, just like that. Now if we come back in here to the inside of the vehicle here, at the bottom of our panel, we're going to have two more of those plastic push pin fasteners, one here at the rear and one more towards the front. We need to remove both of those. So now we can go ahead and actually remove the panel. There's going to be some clips up top we need to break free. We'll just pull straight outward. Once we've done that, we're going to need to maneuver it around this latch mechanism here. We're also going to have a couple plugs we need to unplug as well. So now that we have our panel free, we're not actually removing it completely. We did actually have one electrical connector here. I went ahead and left the lights plugged in because we don't really need to move it that much. But once we get the panel free, we're going to lift it up. And then directly on top of our fuse box here, there's going to be a little cover that we'll need to peel back. And that's going to reveal a 10mm nut that we need to remove in order to take out our taillight. So we're going to remove that same nut for the taillight over here on the driver's side. However, we don't need to actually break this panel loose here. We'll just reach up here. We should be able to feel it. We're going to have some sound deadening material we'll have to pull down, but then we should be able to reveal that 10mm nut. So it is kind of tucked back up in here. I have my hand on it now. It's sort of directly back behind here. So I just recommend a small ratchet to get that out. So now we're going to come inside in our little weather seal here between the quarter panel and our hatch liner. We're going to have this plastic cover which covers some of the fasteners we need to get to remove our taillight. we're going to take a plastic trim panel tool, just sneak that down through the top there, and just gently peel up to remove this completely. Now we're going to have 2 torque screws here, which we'll need to remove, and then we should be able to pull the tail light out. So now we'll take a T30 torque spit and we'll remove those 2 screws now. So with our 2 fasteners removed, we're going to go ahead and pull the tail light outwards towards us, away from the vehicle. Just like so. Then we'll have an electrical connector we need to unplug here at the bottom before we can remove it completely. There's going to be a red locking tab we'll pull outward. Then we can depress the connector. We should be able to wiggle it free. And now we'll just repeat that same process on the other side. So the next thing we need to do is we're going to come to either side here. We're going to have this plastic wheel well molding here. There's going to be some clips in 3 locations. One here, and then one up here. We're going to take a pick tool here. We're going to slip this between the trim panel here and our quarter panel here. And then we're just going to pry outward. We should be able to release one of those clips. Once we get one out, we can then work our way up, releasing the others like so. Because if we look right here, we're going to have a screw which we're going to need to remove. So we'll take an 8mm socket here to get that screw out. Now we can just repeat that same process on the other side. So now we need to remove these rear reflective lenses. In order to do that, I'm going to slightly open this lower portion of our hatch here. Let's take a trim panel tool. I'm going to come in from the back side there. We're just going to carefully pry outward. Directly behind those lenses, we're going to have an 8mm screw, one on each side that we need to remove. Now we're going to come to the underside of our vehicle here, directly behind or below the rear bumper. We're going to be removing this sort of plastic panel here. In order to do that, we're going to have several of these screws here along the underside. You can see there's plenty of them. We'll remove those all using an 8mm socket. So now we're going to have some more screws over here on our side panels. We'll need to remove those as well using the same 8mm socket we used before. Now we should begin to start removing our panels here. So now we can begin to actually remove our rear bumper fascia. We're going to start on either side here. We're simply just going to pull the panel out to release the clips like so. So we got the outer edges of our bumper loose, and we didn't really run into any problems till we got inside here where the hatch is. So there's going to be a couple of these body clips here that go into this little plastic panel. There's also an 8mm bolt here that we'll have to remove first, but then we just took a trim panel tool, just squeezed that down there, and then we were able to break free those clips there. That's pretty much the hardest part, is just right here. So once we get that free, we should be able to pull the bumper the rest of the way off, making sure we disconnect any electrical connectors. So if you are struggling with those, we just have a trim panel tool here. We just stuck it down through there, and we just use this to sort of pry outward. That should help you release those clips there. So we're going to have one connector here on the passenger side. In order to release it, we're going to have a tab on the top and on the bottom. We'll simply squeeze those together, and then we should be able to pull straight out. Now with everything removed, we can go ahead and set our bumper aside. So now that we have our fascia off, we're going to come over here to the passenger side. On our bumper beam here, below it, we're going to have one little push pin fastener, which is holding part of our wiring harness. We need to go ahead and break that free now. So now on either side here, we're going to have our muffler brackets, which attach it to the bumper beam. That's going to be removed using a 13mm socket to get that nut off there. We'll need to do this on both sides. now what we need to do, we're going to come to the top of our bumper beam here. We're going to have this center panel here that's attached to these two outside panels. We need to break free this center panel. That way when we remove our bumper beam, we don't have to worry about removing these outside panels. So if we take a look way back in there, we're going to see a push pin fastener. There's one on either side. We have some clips in front of it we need to remove as well. So I'm going to take a 90-degree pick tool. I'm going to try to get the center of that fastener up, and we should be able to pull it the rest of the way out. So now once we have the push pin fasteners out of the rear, at the front here on either side here, we're going to have some clips which hold these two panels together. We're going to come in here with our pry tool. We're just going to pry those panels free. Just like that. So now we're going to come to the bottom side of this plastic panel here. We're going to have 5 push pin fasteners, which we're going to need to take out. And also here over on the passenger side, we're going to have a wiring connector we need to remove as well. We'll go ahead and do that now, and then we'll remove our fasteners. We can go ahead and set this aside. So now we're going to take an 18mm socket, and we're going to be removing the 8 nuts which hold our reinforcement bumper onto the vehicle here. So we're going to have 4 on each side, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. So now with all of our nuts removed, we can go ahead and pull off our bumper beam. Now we'll go ahead and set this aside. So now we can take our trailer hitch here and go ahead and set it onto the factory bumper beam studs. So before we secure the trailer hitch to the vehicle here, we're going to take our exhaust hanger brackets that come in our kit here. They're going to be labeled L and R for left and right. We'll set those over like so. Now with everything in place, we'll come back with our nuts here. We'll secure everything and torque it down to the factory specification. So now we can install our latching mechanism here. We're going to have the lock over on the driver's side and the knob on the passenger side. We'll simply just set it up into position. Then we'll take our 1/2-inch bolts here that come with our kit, line up our holes, insert them through. Then we'll have our lock nuts that go on the other side. We'll then use a 3/4-inch wrench and socket to tighten these down. Now we can go ahead and torque everything down to the specifications and our instructions. So now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to come up to the top here. If you remember, we broke these 2 panels free earlier. We're going to go ahead and reattach them now. We have some clips at the rear, and then we have those 2 push pin fasteners, one at the very back on each side. So then we're going to go ahead and take our exhaust hanger brackets here and bolt them to the special brackets that came with our kit here. We're not going to be using the hardware that we removed them with. The factory hardware is going to be discarded. We're going to get a bag with 2 of the bolts and nuts that we need here to re-secure that. So we'll need to do that on both sides. And then attached to the front of our hitch here, we're going to have this little horizontal support bracket here. There'll be 3 holes here that we'll use to attach this bracket, this piece here. These 2 outside holes here are not going to be reused, so we have the 3 center ones. That'll be plenty strong to hold it in place. And then don't forget to make your electrical connector as well. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our lower valence panel here. This is going to be the one attached directly below the bumper. We're actually going to need to trim this. Now we are going to have some factory cut lines here that are for this actually, but we're going to need to cut a little bit larger. As you can see here, there's going to be a panel that's missing here, but we're going to be cutting on the inside of there. and that's pretty much the only cut we're going to make on this side that doesn't have the factory cut lines. And then we'll come across here. You can see where our factory cut lines in there. We just went ahead and come up a little bit here. There's going to be a good diagram in your instructions here that'll make this make a little bit more sense here, but on this side here they actually call for leaving a couple inches of this panel on, but once you remove the rest of the structure, this one pretty much just falls out on its own, so it gives us a little bit of extra room to work. But this is essentially what it's going to look like when we have our cuts made. Make sure you clean up all the rough edges with a file or some sandpaper. So now we're ready to go ahead and put our bumper back on, reassemble everything in the reverse order that we took it off. And that'll do it today for our look and installation of the Stealth Hitches Hidden Rack Receiver here on our 2021 BMW X5.